Okay, thank you everyone for being here. If we haven't met before or seen each other on screen, I'm Maria Bernier, the State Data Coordinator for the Connecticut State Library. We're here today to talk about all of that fabulous annual report data that libraries have been sending me, how you can mine that data for your own purposes and turn it into something useful for your budget presentations, your advocacy, and your communications with your stakeholders. So most of the next hour will be spent talking about that, how to use the data. We will talk a little bit briefly about why we collect this data. Primarily, it's because the Institute of Museum and Library Services wants to know what's happening at public libraries across the country and in the territories. So they have helped to define a set of questions that all of us are using nationwide. So all of the public libraries in all of the states are using the same questions to keep track of basic library services, circulation, collections, income, expenses, all of those pieces of information that you send me. And in addition, each state can add their own questions, and we do that in Connecticut. You've seen those. I usually talk about those in my other webinar about how to complete the annual report, which you can also find recorded online. But IMLS wants to get a basic set of data and have a baseline for everybody across the country. So that's really why we collect the data and send it to a federal agency. But in the meantime, we also get to use that data for our own purposes. And my predecessor, Tom Newman, put together a lot of charts and tools that I have tried not to break and tried to maintain for you. So he really captured the idea of taking this data and utilizing it for our own purposes. So that's the model we're working with. All right, most of what we're going to talk about today, I think all of it, is available on this LibGuide for statistics. Now, you do not have to write down this link. I will send it to you at about 12:30 this afternoon in an email after our webinar is completed. So you'll be able to find all of this information on our LibGuide. And there's a ton of information for you there. And I apologize because it has gotten to be a very deep and detailed LibGuide, but we will walk our way through that and I'll show you what's where. But there's statistical information there, the annual report form that you found, a blank copy with all the questions that you sent to me is on that guide, those chart and report creators that we're going to dig into today, as well as Tableau visualizations of all your data. And there's some fact flyers that are linked on that page. So I think I am going to exit my PowerPoint right now, and we're just going to hop right over to that LibGuide because that's where the gold mine is. All right, so I can even put this link right into the chat in case you would like to follow along. Right there for you. So this is our home page right now. This is a Division of Library Development's LibGuide's homepage. And if you didn't have the specific URL that you needed, you can always come to our homepage. And in this sort of link cloud grouping over here on the left, you'll be looking for library statistics. So you can always find it here. You can also find it in the upper menu. This navigation menu appears on every single guide, every single page. And the services menu is really all of our core Division of Library Development services, all of those right? Borrow it, deliver it, find it. And right down here is library statistics. So that's another way to navigate there. And this is what the kind of homepage of the statistical page looks like. And if you're not familiar with LibGuides, I encourage you just to spend some time digging around in here. Just click on everything. You're not going to break it. All right. Like just click because it's a website. So you'll see that right here. Let me even blow that up a little bit. I can make it a little larger for you. You'll see right here, all of these tabs get us to different pages. So this one right here is our statistical profile page. There's an annual report page. So every time I click on it, something else comes up. Chart and report creators page with a lot of info. So go ahead and play with all of these tabs, click around, open things up. Please do that. I also want to point out this search box, which occurs at the top of every single LibGuide. If you're ever, again, lost and you don't know where to go, just type in a keyword like statistics and do a search. And here's the results. And we're just going to look at the statistics for Connecticut Public Libraries LibGuide. So that's kind of how you navigate around through here to find the information that you're looking for. What else do I want to tell you while we are here? Okay, we're going to start on this first page with the statistical profile. This is all of the raw data that you sent me in your annual reports. So I get 177 annual reports from public libraries. I smush them all into one big spreadsheet, try to make the numbers look consistent and sort of read consistently. And that's what comes out as the statistical profile. And this one covers that fiscal year from July 1st, 2021 through June 30, 2022. Let's just open that. So if you click on it, you're going to open an Excel file. This is your copy of the file. If you download it and open it and play with it, you are not messing up anybody's original file. All right. So feel free to download as many times as you want, play around, manipulate, edit, like do whatever you want to do to this file because it's your copy. If you want to save it, go ahead and save it to your desktop, but you can always download it again right from the LibGuide if you need another copy of it. So it opens up to the intro page. Let's see, I also want to let you know I am using the most current version of Excel. So my ribbon up here may look a little bit different from your version of Excel, but just be aware that Microsoft and Excel sort of have features that continue from version to version. So if I'm able to do something in this most recent version, you're probably able to do it in a slightly older version of Excel too. You just might have to dig around a little bit for different menus within Excel itself. I also want to give us some more screen space, so I'm going to collapse this ribbon and just make it go away. That's that little caret way over here on the right. Give us a little more screen space. So our intro is here. You can read through this. You can click on the links to get to other pages. This, if I scroll down, yada, 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 it just gives you the context that we need for every kind of resource document. And as you keep going down, there are some reminders here about the data. There's a reminder about how to use the sorting and filtering tool. And then there are some definitions as we go down. That is our intro page. The totals page is just a strict numeric tabulation of some key figures from the past 6 years. This is a great place to grab statewide numbers and maybe see how they've changed over the years. But if you need a succinct data point for a specific measurement, this is a great place to look for it and find it. These charts right here are also statewide charts. So this is sort of summing up what's happening across the state of Connecticut in this year compared to previous years. And you can hop around and scroll down. Maybe you want to hop down to library services, take a look at how library use has changed over the past few years. The Connecticut percent of population who have library cards, library visits, lots of great information in these charts that may help you again provide context for your own specific library information, where you may be able to say, here's what's happening in our town, but here's what's happening statewide, or we are doing way better than everybody across the state. So these charts are useful in some contexts to include in terms of information or copy and paste into your reports. So let's take a look now at the library data sheet. Sorry, I have not pointed out, I am clicking on all of these tabs at the bottom of the Excel window. So there's a lot of layers in each spreadsheet. Make sure you're in the correct tab as we're looking. Library data is related to specific libraries. In contrast, municipal data bundles up municipalities where there may be multiple libraries. For instance, Groton has 3 libraries within its boundaries. So in the municipal data tab, those 3 libraries get bundled together into one line. And in contrast, in the library data tab, they each get their own line. So they are their own individual distinct entities in library data. This is an enormous spreadsheet. There are 190 rows, obviously one for each library, plus some extra rows at the top. And there are 398 columns. So it goes, right? Like you could just scroll for days and it's just going to keep going. So that is a column for every question in the annual report that you submitted to me, plus some columns that are calculated within here for per capita information or percent calculations. And those are usually in red font. So this one here, column I, square feet per capita, is in red font because that's kind of calling out that this is calculated within the spreadsheet. I also want to make these numbers a little bit larger so you can see it. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, which is a handy thing. This plus and minus down here at the bottom right corner of the Excel sheet just gives us a little bit larger numbers for my eyes and for your eyes. There is at the top of this spreadsheet a table of contents because it's 398 columns, right? So if you need to hop down to circulation, you can click on that link and get to those questions. If you want to pop over to personnel, just click on that link and it'll get you back. And you can always just kind of come back to buildings and administration to get to the beginning of the spreadsheet. Or you can use this little guy to get those remaining columns. Also wanted to point out this top row right up here, this very first row right at the beginning of the spreadsheet contains the question numbers from the annual report. So if you have your own annual report from your library and you're saying, I know I put this number in response to that question, where does that show up in this enormous statistical profile thing? You can use this top column to look for that question number. And that helps me figure out where I am and helps you figure out where that data goes as well. So that's a handy little tool. And I want to point out these rows here, rows 9 through 12, which are helpful in giving you some averages, medians, totals, and letting you know how many libraries reported their data in this question. Most times I get answers from all 177 libraries, but sometimes there are questions that not every library can answer. I'm thinking of the number of Wi-Fi sessions. Right now, only 70 libraries can report that number, and the remaining libraries don't. So you'll be able to see on this row 12 how many libraries have responded and provided data to that question. Let's see, I also want to explain the difference between average and median. And you'll be able to see that here in column I for square feet per capita. So the average statewide is 1.11 square feet of library space per person. And we're familiar with averages, right? You take all your numbers, you add them up, and you divide by the number of answers you get. So this is all of the square feet reported. This almost 4 million square feet divided by the number of people in Connecticut, and that's how our average is our statewide average. Now the median is just the answer in the middle. So I got 177 answers to this question. And if I sorted them all from smallest to largest or largest to smallest, whichever way, and I sort of counted in from either end, the number that's in the middle of the list, the middle position, that's the median. Median can be helpful to sort of disregard some outliers. So we could imagine in some questions, maybe library budget, maybe number of staff, maybe in total collection numbers, that there would be some particularly large or particularly small libraries in our state that might sort of skew the numbers in either direction, right? Like they might have huge material spending budgets compared to everybody else. And if we just threw them into the average, it might make our average a little higher. So the median in its own way is a little bit more realistic about where's the actual middle as opposed to the average. So as you're using all of these tools, make sure you are using average and median correctly for yourselves and in your interpretations to your stakeholders so that they understand really what it is that you're talking about. Those are two critical factors. I also want to show you this sort and filter tool in row 13. This is like the best thing about Excel to help narrow down the data in this enormous sheet so you can really focus on like things or similar things or the things you're looking for. So for instance, if I scroll over here, I'm going to put everybody back in alphabetical order because I appreciate it when my towns are in alphabetical order. I'm going to show you how the filter tool works. If I click on this little down arrow in row 13, I get this pop-up thing. And so I can sort this column numerically from smallest to largest or large to small. I could use some number filters and really focus in this column or select specific ones. So for instance, let's just show how to narrow this down to a population between 4,000 people and 6,000 people. So now, because that filter is employed, you can sort of see the symbol has changed a little bit. All of the libraries and towns that are listed now have a population between 4,000 and 6,000. So that's one super quick way to narrow down this list and find libraries that are similar to yours. And every single column has this sort and filter tool, so you can narrow it down by any criteria or measure you want. And when you want to get rid of it, you just clear this filter and everybody comes back. We've got all our data again. Make sure that you're clearing your filters as you go along, or you're going to accidentally omit a lot of things that you really wanted to include in there. I also want to show you in the county how this works with a controlled vocabulary. So we only have a certain number of counties in the state, right? There's only so many. We've got a controlled vocabulary. I don't want all our counties. Maybe I just want to pick a specific county and filter that way. So that's how you use all of these wonderful filtering tools and sorting tools. The sort is pretty simple, right? Sort smallest to largest. There we go. Just little to big numbers, or sort alphabetically. Super handy. Now, these columns for the angelic ranking, the county, and the CLA region will be helpful for you and just in terms of narrowing down your data, useful for the right comparison points. Okay, so let's talk about some actual questions that people might want to use this data for. Okay, thank you. As we're getting through this, you might want to figure out library materials expenditure per capita. Sometimes that's an interesting point of comparison, right? So how much does my library spend on materials per person compared to others? That's an expense thing, and we're just going to click on the expenses to hop down there. And I happen to know that's in column LU, library materials expenditures per capita. And maybe I just want to look at my library and say, great, we spent $3.73 per person. So that's how you can pinpoint specific data for your library. But maybe you want to say, where does my library fall in relation to others? So let's say highlight a library. We're going to change it colors even so it becomes more visible. See how I did that? I selected the entire row, and then under the home, I just changed the fill color to something that was really easy for me to see. So now I can see where my library is. I'm going to sort this now, smallest to largest. Okay, look, so there's a lot of libraries that come out with a lot less spending per capita than Andover does. And as we scroll down, here's Andover sort of ranked in the list. And one way to quickly figure out how many libraries are less is just to highlight all of the cells that are less than the cell you're looking at. So they're all highlighted. If we look down here at the very bottom of the screen, hopefully you can see this, in Excel, it will automatically calculate a lot of things for you. So it's telling me I've highlighted 72 cells. That means 72 libraries spend less per person on library materials than Andover does. So that's a quick way to figure out kind of where your library falls in comparison with others, because I don't have a chart for every single measure. Sometimes you have to dig it out for yourself. Okay, so let's also see how that compares. So let me scroll back down. Andover Library spends $373 per person, still less than the state average of $506. Likewise, less than the state median of $453. So again, points of comparison, specific pieces of data that you can use. And all of this specificity really builds confidence, I think, in your stakeholders when you can say, no, I know for a fact, that's how much it is. And here's where I got that data. So grab all these little data points, put them in there. Alrighty, I am going to remove that fill so Andover is not highlighted anymore. Let's see what libraries are fine free. That's often a question that comes up on contact, right? Like everybody wants to know who's fine free, who's not. I don't actually ask that specific question in the annual report because it's surprisingly complex. There are many libraries that are almost fine free in the sense that they're still charging late fees, maybe on a museum pass or maybe on a hotspot. But for the most part, like 98% of their materials have no fines. So instead, what we ask is, what's your typical book fine and what's your typical DVD fine? And for libraries that answer 0 to both of those, we say these are either fine free or pretty close to fine free. So which ones are they? That information comes in, it's in the income and revenue section, even though it's not really income. It's in these columns LK through LM, typical book fine, typical DVD fine. So if I say the typical fine is $0, see how I did that? Okay, and I'm going to click on my filter tool again, and I'm going to specifically select $0. Now I get a list of libraries that are not charging any fines for books or DVDs. This, I think, has gone up to 93 or 94 libraries this year, which is really fun. So that's where you can find other libraries that aren't charging fines. Now let me clear all of these filters. I've got multiple filters going, so what I want to do, if I can do this, is clear all my filters. Clear all of the filters, so I'm getting all of my data back. I'm going to put those towns in alphabetical order again. Another question we get frequently is, what are comparable salaries for a specific position in my area? So let's, for example, talk about a children's librarian. Maybe you are lucky that you get to hire a brand new children's librarian. Maybe it's a new position and you're trying to figure out how much to pay, or maybe you are able to hire an additional person, or somebody has left. What's the going rate for a children's librarian in your part of the state? So we hop down to the personnel section. And as we scroll through here, let's see, where is JC? It's a little farther down here. Children's librarian's salary or range is in column JC. Well, so now I've got 177 libraries worth of data. How do I make this something useful to me? Let's start with making sure we're getting full-time librarians. So let me take a look at this column for hours per week. Use this filter tool. Now, because this is sort of an open text field and libraries are typing in all kinds of numbers, it's a little trickier to use the filter. So I'm going to unselect anything less than 35 hours. So it's a little cumbersome. Probably would have been easier to turn off all of the check marks and just select the ones that were higher. Okay, so now I've got 35, hours per week through 40. I'm gonna remove the NAs. Okay, I think I got everybody that's either 35 to 40 hours per week, which is what we consider full-time. So now I've got full-time librarians. And what else do I want to do? I want to sort by population. So I want to find comparable sized towns. And I think I'm going to go between population of 40,000 and 60,000, give myself a little range. to see what I can come up with. Okay, so now I've got libraries that are within a similar population range. We're looking at full-time positions, and then, oops, let me sort by angelic ranking. Okay, let me sort here, smallest to largest, by our wealth ranking. So perhaps I don't want to necessarily compete with very wealthy communities. So I may want to look at communities that are more comparable to mine in terms of wealth ranking. Maybe instead I want to narrow this down by county and find the libraries in my county within a specific population range that have full-time children's librarians, which gets us down to not that many, right? Sorry, I'm scrolling around here. So now we've got 4 libraries full-time in Hartford County with a specific population. And here's the salary ranges that those libraries are paying. So that's how you can find data within this statistical profile about specific positions within the library. I can only give you back the data that I receive. So while I may have children's librarian salary ranges, I may not have the custodian salary range. I may not have other positions in your library. So it is a limited set of data, largely because it's so much work. So I don't want to ask you guys for something that may not be used. But these are the data points we have. So that's how you would use the raw data from a specific fiscal year for your own purposes, and how you might use some of those statewide charts. I'm going to minimize this one for the time being. If you have any questions, pop them into the chat. We'll go back to our LibGuide here, because I want to show you that there are statistical profiles from past years here. So if you needed data from a previous year for some reason, it's available to you. And right here are just fiscal year 22 statewide numbers in case you need a number to grab really quickly and you don't want to open an Excel spreadsheet. All those numbers are here. But back to this profile page, if we scroll down a little bit, there's some other resources here. If you wanted to look at that enormous spreadsheet as a PDF, you certainly could. Some helpers here in this PDF about how to make the most of that profile. This guides you through a lot of the things we talk about today in terms of filtering and sorting. Here are those charts as a PDF. If you find them helpful for anything, you can share those with your constituents. But right here, this long-term data and trends box. These statistics for the past many years show some individual library trends over time. So let's open that up and take a look. These are very limited data points. There's only 28 columns in this spreadsheet, which is not nearly so many, but it gives you a little snapshot of what might be happening in your library. This in particular is a great tool for anybody who's new to their position, perhaps a new director, a new department head. Maybe you want to see what's been happening in your specific library for the past 25 years or so before you got there. So the important thing here is to use, again, this filter tool in row 3. And it's easiest if we pick a specific library. So in this case, I'm going to deselect everybody and just pick a specific library. We're going to try out Avon this time. And now we're seeing only Avon Libraries data every single year since 1996 up to 2022. Let me make those numbers a little bit bigger for you. So you can see their wealth ranking over time, population, but you can see how the number of library visits has changed over time, the total number of borrowers per capita, lots of great data points as we go along. Maybe you'd like to look at wages over the years, operating expenditures, town tax appropriation per capita, how that's developed over time. So these are, again, some very specific, succinct numbers that you can take a look at if you just need a raw number or if you'd like to track those and see how things have changed. So great, useful resource. Yep, I think that's all I want to tell you about this one. Feel free to ask me questions in the chat, obviously, anytime. If you think of a question afterward, send me an email, right? My email address is on pretty much every page, maria.bernier@ct.gov. I will always answer you back. Is there a quick way to clear all the filters? Yep. So let's go back. Oh, let's go back to this one where we had 1 million filters, right? There's a lot going on. So under the home menu, under the sort and filter tool right here, we're just going to click clear. And that clears all of the filters that you have applied. So that just gets you right back to the original data. So that's the simplest way to do it. Otherwise, you got to find every column and clear it, and you might miss one, right? So that was easy. Home, sort and filter. Yeah, and we don't have any filters applied right now, so it's all cleared. Super. Okay, go away. Back to our LibGuide. Statistical trends. You'll notice this is still last year's. I'm still working on this document. I'm hoping to get it up early next week. This is such fascinating information, and I'll announce it on Contact when it is available. But it really looks in written information about what's happening. It interprets what's been going on this year in the context of past years. So I'm trying to pull out what's happening there with all of our libraries going fine free, with visits, with circulation, really what's been happening, how the pandemic affected us and how we're recovering. So I'm still working on that, but that's a great, really fun, deeper view about what's been happening statewide. These statewide trend charts are interesting. If you want to take a look, again, these aren't specific to any library, but this just gives you that visual cue about what's been going on in Connecticut for many years. Just another way of looking at the data. All right, we are going to hop over now. Let me scroll up on my LibGuide. We're going to hop over to these chart and report creators right here. Again, this is a very detailed and rich page. There is a lot happening here. Feel free as you're playing with it to click around, right? Click, click, click on everything, open it up, see what it is. You're not going to break anything. I promise you, whatever you download, you can just delete. It's not affecting the original documents in any way. So now these are the real gold mine for your statistical purposes. This chart and report creator for this specific fiscal year. Let's open that up. This is how you can make comparisons with other libraries in the state based on population, wealth, or any other specific comparisons you'd like. Always enable the editing. All right. So this is how it comes up and it's blank, right? There's nothing filled in because you're going to fill it in. And you'll see this table on the right is all NA, right? That's okay. That's how it's supposed to look initially. Once you select some data, this table will fill in. So for instance, let's just try Meriden, and I don't know why I'm picking Meriden, but that's what I have in my notes. But see, I picked Meriden here from the drop-down list. Now this table on the right changed. Did you see how that happened? So now here's Meriden, and this table is showing me libraries with populations similar to Meriden, less and more than. It's showing me the angelic wealth ranking for those libraries. It's also giving me some tips like, is this library anywhere close to Meriden in terms of wealth ranking, and how close is it? So if I wanted to do some comparisons with Meriden, I might want to select other libraries that are similar in population and wealth ranking. Or I might just want to pick any other libraries that are similar in terms of population, or I can pick, honestly, any libraries that I want to because I have that freedom with this tool. So let's try here, entering a specific population. Maybe, for instance, I want to look at, I want to compare Meriden with other libraries with a similar population between 50,000 and 70,000, because Meriden is right around 60,000, right? So that gives us slightly smaller towns, slightly larger towns, but what does that look like? All right, so if I hop over to the general charts and scroll down, now here I see specific charts and specific measures with my library, Meriden, that I selected from the front page. It's also showing me the average of the population range that I selected, the chosen range, as well as the average statewide. And these three columns will show up in the same order in each of these charts as we scroll down, right? So it's always going to be the library you select. And next is going to be the average of the population, and then the average of the state. So you can scroll down and start to see how a specific library compares with similar sized towns and the state averages. In different measures here, circulation criteria, busyness, more circulation. Children's circulation is always a popular thing to look at. Young adult circulation, e-materials circulation, how that's been working out. Collection turnover. This is in a measurement of how much your collection is used. Then we're getting into programs. So as you scroll down, you'll see there's a lot of charts here that you can use. And they just keep going, right? There's collections, there's income. You can see how much each library is receiving in comparison to an average in terms of population or statewide. Income, expenses. So these are really useful comparison measures for your purposes and dealing with your stakeholders. So maybe you see one that you want to copy and use in your reports. This one, wages and salaries expenditure per capita. Maybe you're trying to advocate for additional funding so that you can pay your staff a little more money. And you look at this chart and you say, my goodness, people, this is an indicator that we are paying less per resident for the wages and salaries of library staff. So you might want to put that in your report. You're going to right click on that. Nope. You're going to right click on that. Nope. Why is this not working? Right click, copy. That's what we want. And you're going to open, say, a new Word document, which I should have had open. Okay. So I have copied that particular chart and I want to paste it into a document. So I have already copied it and I'm going to paste it. Now, when I right click, I see all of these paste options. I don't want these other ones because it's going to make messiness with my data. I'm going to paste this as a picture, which is the farthest right option. So paste options, I'm going to paste it as a picture. And now it's an image that I can resize. Yep, I can resize if it cooperates with me. I can sort of type data around it and type words around it. And I can use the features in Word to manipulate what this looks like. I could smush it, but it becomes an image that you can put into a PowerPoint, that you can put into a Word document. You could use in many different ways. So you saw how that works. We right click, copy, and then come down here, right click, paste as a picture. So now it's a picture. Useful thing. That's one thing. Now the rest of this tool, let's see, maybe we wanted to just compare with the default populations. That's an option. The charts changed, right? So because Meriden's population is 60,000, now we're comparing with cities that are more than 50,000. So that's an option here as well. Play around with these. Try different criteria, try different combinations, and see which charts are telling the story that you want to tell, and use those charts for your purposes. So you can see here, tiny little print. Let me make that bigger for you. Right here, you can see the population group comparison ranges and sort of see what groups you might fall into. So those are some options. Okay. Another thing we can do here is select specific libraries that we want to compare to. This is where you can say, maybe I want to compare my library with the ones that neighbor us. Or maybe I want to compare my library with others around the state that have similar populations and wealth rankings. You get to pick whichever ones you want to compare with. In this case, I think I have decided we're going to pick our neighbors. So Merredin's contiguous neighbors are Cheshire and Middlefield. And you will find that this list is sometimes a little clunky to work with. Middlefield and Middletown. Another neighbor is Southington. Okay, and another number is Wallingford. Now, these comparisons are slightly unfair, right? Because yes, we might be neighbors, but Middlefield's characteristics as a more rural town with perhaps a smaller budget aren't necessarily fair for comparing with Wallingford. So that's why you would want to be thoughtful in figuring out which libraries you want to compare to. Is it strictly geographic? Is it like comparisons? Understand who you're selecting and why, and the story that tells your funders. But we have picked these 5 for geographic reasons. We're going to look at comparison charts. And you'll see here what these charts all look like. So again, the featured library is always first. So Merredin is always going to be first in these charts. And then the other libraries show up in the order you selected them. I happen to do it alphabetically because I'm a nerd that way. So Cheshire is always going to be second, then Middlefield. And then the final column is an average of the 5 selected libraries. So comparing Merredin's visits per capita in 1 year versus the average for those 5 libraries, there's 2 different data points there. So as we scroll down, you'll get a sense, just looking at the library and the comparison libraries, where one library might stack up against others. Again, use this data for whatever purposes you find useful. Honestly, there are many stories in here. Every library has their own story. So I encourage you, play with your library and see what happens with different factors and different comparison points, because there's going to be something that's fascinating in here. I haven't looked at all of the choices, so I don't know what all the stories are, but something will resonate with you. So what else do I want to tell you about this? Comparison charts. Yep. So let's just say, as I scroll down, let me also show you at the top. If you're tired of scrolling, there's these tiny little table of contents things up here, and you can hop down to expenditure charts if that's something you're really interested in. Just helps you move through this sheet a little more easily. You can see operating expenditures per capita. If I want to hop back up to the top, let me click on the top. Let me look at income charts. Operating income per capita, municipal appropriation per capita. Look at this, poor Merredin needs more money. Sprague, why is it showing Sprague? I must have accidentally picked Sprague instead of Southington, didn't I? Yep, sorry about that. Yep, there we go. Whew. Yep, so click library use. And we want to take a look at library visits per capita. Say, for instance, you wanted to copy this specific chart into your documentation and your presentation. We can certainly do that, right? Oops. Copy, and then we're going to paste into our Word document. Maybe you want to change the colors. No, I'm going to show you that in a minute. No, okay. Yep, I'm going to show you that on the other chart. So that's kind of what these comparisons look like. There are some reports here. again, so you can look at specifically numeric information if you're interested in that. But go ahead and click through all of these, right? So this is your library compared with an average in terms of population and an average statewide. If we look at the comparison charts, this is your library against 5 specific other libraries. And these charts M, report M, and comparison charts M, these are the municipal variations on it. So remember how I said earlier, you can look at the statistical profile data for every single individual library, or in cases where there are multiple libraries in one town, you can compare municipality to municipality. So those are useful. These evaluation charts are interesting to scroll through, compares your library with the median, not the average. This is the median of similar population libraries and similar wealth ranking libraries and the statewide median. So again, play with it, see which chart tells the story you want to tell and make it work for you. So I think those are all of the inputs that we have an option for. If you scroll down, this is where you get to compare with other municipalities. So that's an option for you as well. Many different ways to slice and dice this data. Tons of options. All right, let's close that for the time being. I also want to show you other tools here. So we're back to our LibGuide. Now this chart and report creator from 1996 to 2022. This is another gold mine. This is where you're going to start to see your library's trends over time. We will open up that file. This is another super one if you're new at your job and again want to understand what's been happening in your library and similar libraries for the past 13 years or 27 years, you can find that here. Now we are going to pick on who? Let's pick Meriden again. Nope, let's pick somebody who's alphabetically higher. Let's pick Avon. Yep, so if we look at the 13-year trends, you can just see what's been happening at this specific library over time. So this first chart is always this library. And the second chart to the right shows this library in red compared to similar towns in terms of wealth ranking or population or statewide. So as we scroll down, you can see how that looks, right? So on the left, that chart is my library. On the right is my library compared with similar ones, as well as the statewide median. So these are more ways, again, of just looking at all of your data that you have. Interestingly, I want to show you what this looks like. Circulation, you can see it in the circ stats here, right? You see that dip right there in 2012. That happens throughout circulation. E-media was going up at that time period. Hard copy circulation was going down. As we scroll, collection turnover. So like what was happening in 2012? Library visits are down. This is how you can see the effect of a library construction project. The library was closed potentially for several months or a period of time during that year, and it affected their stats. But then you can see how everything bounces back afterward, right? Visits per service hour, visits per capita, things come back after a closure. So if you are looking at your own stats as a new director or a new department head and you see something like that, it's like, all right, what happened in 2012? Like everything went down in 2012. Take a look at your library's history and see if there's any kind of documentation about what was going on then. Could be that there was some significant event that affected all of those use measures. And obviously, we all saw everything tanking in 2020 and 2021. So there is a larger story there because of COVID for those years. I also want to show you, we can click right over here, trend charts since 1996. These are kind of cool. You get to see your library at the top, and then you get to see your library in comparison with a state average and similar sized towns. It's also important to be consistent. And I want to show you what that looks like in the charts in terms of consistency. Yep, and we're going to look at their 27-year charts. So this is a specific library. We're looking at circulation per capita, library visits, and I want to show you this chart. So this is why consistency is important, right? So since 2019, 2010, the library has been interpreting this data point consistently. So when they submit their annual report to me, they're looking at the question, they're looking at the definitions, they're saying, all right, let's try to be accurate in answering this question and try to apply the same process and criteria that we have used in the past so that we come out with consistent data over time. I don't know what was going on here prior to 2010, but obviously the accounting methodology was a little bit different from year to year. So this is why I encourage library directors and anybody who fills out the annual report to take notes about where you find your data and how you arrived at the answers you're providing me, so that again, consistency is there and that your successors, whoever has to do the annual report when you are in the Caribbean, can do it in the same way and get consistent data. I also want to show you how to change these charts. So let's say, for instance, sorry, I'm squiggling around. Let's say this circulation per capita chart. Honestly, a bar chart is not the right way to do this. This should really be a line graph instead. So I've selected that particular graph. And when I go up here to my ribbon, if I am looking at the chart design menu, I would like to change my chart type. And I'm going to change this to a line drawing instead. And now this is actually how these things are supposed to work, right? Like if you're looking at trends over time, it really should be a line graph to show you where things are dipping. That's COVID, that's how that happened. So that's how you can easily change your chart type. Maybe you also want to change the color of this particular line. So I have selected that line and I'm going to format up here in the top ribbon. And I'm going to format that selection. And I'm going to use the fill choice and I'm going to change that line from red. And maybe my high school locally uses orange as their school colors. So I'm going to change that line to orange because that's going to resonate with my funders. So I can manipulate that. And maybe my funders aren't going to necessarily understand per capita. So maybe I want to change this title to say per resident. Maybe that's going to be a little bit clearer for them. So I can change the title. Now, when I copy, when I copy this chart and move it over to my Word document or my PowerPoint, wherever I want to put it, I'm going to paste it as a picture and it comes out with those changes. So that's something you can manipulate for your presentations if you want to change the titles, change the colors, change how things look. Maybe I find this to be too busy. So I am going to change my axis options right here and say that I want these major lines to appear every 2 points instead. So do you see how that changed? Let me undo it. So now see how it's really busy. There's a lot of horizontal lines down here. Just takes up a lot of visual space. Maybe I want to make some of those lines go away. And so that's why I changed the axis option. So there's a lot you can do in Excel to make your charts look different for your purposes, or to be easier to read, or to be more consistent with the visual look of your library. So just play around with Excel a little bit. And maybe you didn't like the copy and paste. The snipping tool is always helpful, right? We've got a snip tool on most computers. Where are you? Come to me. So I can do I can take a little sort of screenshot of certain things and save that if I wanted to instead. So that's another option for just succinctly saving a little piece of this as a JPEG or something else. No, I don't actually. And this is also a great way to capture a couple of things in one image. What might that look like? Let me scroll down. Whoops. So if I wanted to grab these two charts together and keep them together, that's when I might use my snipping tool. Take a little snip of that and save this as a JPEG that I could then embed into a Word document, PowerPoint, anything like that. So that's how you can take those nifty little graphics and put them into your presentations. Okay, we're going to go back to our LibGuide because I want to show you this data visualization tab. Blah, it's a long word. This is all the same numbers. It's just looking at them in Tableau, which is an online visualization tool. Play around with this. It's got a different look to it compared to Excel. It uses different colors and sort of displays things in different ways, but it's all the same numbers in the background. You may find this to be more useful or more visually appealing for what you want to present. So take a look there. And that's where you may be able to use the snipping tool to capture a specific chart that you would then embed into your presentations. That's handy. And I also want to show you the flyers and resources for advocacy tab right there. This is where you can find our various fact flyer versions. If you would like to have something prepared that incorporates your specific library data that you can hand out to your stakeholders, we have these options for you. There's a Canva version, as well as a couple of PowerPoint versions. I'm sorry, publisher versions, and then a sort of more old-fashioned publisher version. So those are here. And this is also where I'm going to remind you about our data playlist. So we have a YouTube channel for the Division of Library Development, and all of my recordings about data end up on a specific playlist. And so today's recording will come here as well. So probably later this afternoon, I'll be able to get the video up and you'll be able to find it here if you would like any reminders. Okay. And I am also going to ask you guys at some point today to fill out an evaluation form for me. And this will come to you as a link in an email, as I mentioned later on this afternoon. But I'd love to hear back from you about this webinar, what was useful to you, what I could improve, because I'm going to be offering this again 2 more times in the next month. So any feedback you guys have about what was helpful or what I could improve for future iterations is great for me to know. All right, and we will come back to this lovely little thing, questions here. Ask me questions if you have any. But here's my contact info. You are welcome to reach out to me at any point if you have questions about your library data. If I can get my cursor over, I will put that into the chat. So you've got that info as well. Please be in touch if there's anything I can help you with. But otherwise, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover with you today. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. And I will go ahead and stop our recording.